They have lots and lots of records. You can see they have 134,000 records in their agency. They are our oldest agency. They were the first ones to come onto the Oregon model. So I'm going to go ahead and toggle my record list to the Public Works module. Give that a chance. And then just a refresher reminder, I need to check my user to see what my default module is. The record list, get out there, the record list regardless has this toggle. So regardless of my preferred module at the moment, I can see whatever modules Marion County has from the record list view. But only the record list, incidentally, has this toggle. Every other page in the agency specifically looks to see what your preferred module is. So please do not forget to favorite preference management to include it in your pages. A quick reminder, you just do that through the all pages. You bubble in the star, and then it will show as a favorite. I'm going to look and see right now. I'm pointing at building, and I want to be pointing at Public Works for the purpose of our training today. So just a reminder on that. Once you change your preference, you must do a hard refresh, which is this little, I'm kind of trying to circle it big up here in the upper left corner. Right next to the URL is this little recycle looking arrow. It will indeed close every page you have open because it is refocusing everything that it's going to feed you based on your preference. So everything reloaded, here I am. I'm going to go ahead and start a new record. Just as a reminder, there's a new button under the record list, and also from the Launchpad, there's always the create new record button. Same. These two things do the exact same thing. I'm going to kick off a new record. Reminder on Public Works and Planning modules in particular, you cannot apply online. You can do everything else online, but you can't initiate an application, a new record online with Public Works or Planning. They have to at least come into your office or initiate the application through you in whatever ways you allow, emailing you an application, a PDF, faxing something over and coming into your office, whatever it is that you allow. Alternatively, to kick off an application, they will have to do. Once the record is created, however, from there, they can do everything else. They can pay fees, they can schedule inspections, they can upload documents. Those are all the online functions that we offer through the e-permitting website. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and go with Public Works. There are 4 record types available in the Public Works module. And I'm going to cover these because this is a focus training specifically for Public Works, and I want you to know what's available to you. The tracking record is the one-size-fits-all permit record type. So tracking is, a core record type that you need to even use the module. The project record type is an information-only record type, and it's used kind of like just what it says. When we developed the Public Works module many years ago now with the 5 agencies that we worked with, cities and counties, they said that Public Works is very often project-driven. So the project record was developed in response to that way of doing business. You can put in all of the high-level project details into the project record, and it essentially acts as like an umbrella record. And then you would create permit records attached to it for the life of the project. It's a way for you to kind of centrally connect all of the permit records that roll up to a single project. You can put in project accounting information. You could attach documents about approvals for the project, like at a city or county level, any budgeting documents. I mean, you name it. You can attach maps to the project record and to the child records, just so you know, to the individual permit records. But 5 years into the future, I need to look at some sort of capital improvement project we did on Main Street, for example. I can, search potentially quickly to the project record, be fed all of the high-level project information, and then see all of the attached permits. So that is an option, project record. I'm going to skip up to inquiry. The inquiry record is not a permit. It will never be a permit. It doesn't issue. But it is a bare bones record type that lets you document anything else coming in over the counter that isn't an actual permit for public works. And like it says, sometimes it's just informational inquiries that you want to document. Maybe your agency recently maybe has a new project in the next plan, next year's plan coming up. And maybe there's mixed feelings about it in your jurisdiction, from your constituency. And a lot of people are coming in inquiring about it. And maybe you want to record the kinds of things that they're inquiring about and the things they care about for the next public hearing or the next public meeting, so to speak. Or anything else you need to record, maybe for staff time, to record staff time spent on over-the-counter inquiries. That's a big one. This record type actually came out of very, very originally, this came out of Deschutes County long ago. They requested a research record type and an inquiry record type. The research record type doesn't really fit here, but the inquiry record type became a thing we offer in every single module. Oops, not there. It's under uncategorized. We offer the inquiry record type everywhere. It's now a pretty global, like I said, bare bones record type that allows you to simply record information about anything that is not a permit. Use it or not, that's up to you. We do turn this record type on as default. The investigation record is like it sounds, and it allows public works staff to initiate work without permits or approval. Now, this is just initiating the kind of research investigation legwork part of it. It allows you a record type to record time spent, potentially by inspectors or in-office staff doing research, making phone calls, trying to figure out what happened, why they're working over scope, why they're working without permits at all or approval at all, so on. You can record your investigation. Now, typically at the end of any investigation, I don't care what module, building, planning, on-site, typically in the course of an investigation, if they are working without permits or over scope, the end game is you're required to get the permit, right? And so this will not be the permit. This is strictly to record your investigation because sometimes, I didn't say at the top of this meeting, we might have a few extra people here that haven't been attending all of the AOP project meetings. But I come out of the city of Salem, formerly as permit services supervisor and their business analyst across community development. So I worked heavily with code enforcement, with planning, and with public works engineering and traffic as part of the larger community development process. So I have a lot of experience in some of the things that are called in. Sometimes they're just called in by contractor on contractor type complaint. Competitors, I've seen that before. We had 2 contractors at City of Salem that competed a lot for the same work. And they were often complaining on each other that they had unlicensed work and unpermitted work, and it got kind of silly. But anyway, investigation records can be valid or not valid, right? I mean, it depends on how the complaint came into you. However, I would suggest that if your agency is also using our code compliance module, depending on how your investigation work is or isn't delegated, that you potentially open a code investigation record instead. If code compliance enforcement is going to be the persons or the body or the work group that's actually going to do the investigation versus internal public works staffing. So again, this is about, to some extent, if you are using our code module, this might be about delegation. Now, at Building and Safety at City of Salem, when I was there now 13 years ago, planning, inspections, and investigations were delegated to building inspection. We had an internal MOU where we did the actual investigation work on behalf of planning. And so in that case, we might be opening a building investigation or a code investigation, depends, right? If we had code, comprehensively, but because building was doing the investigation, not the code officers that we also had on staff, we opened a building investigation record. Actually, we don't have building investigation record anymore, do we? Yeah, we do. There it is. I'm like, wait a minute. I know we do. And so again, I'm only bringing that up as just a matter of delegation. You know how you're set up. If complaints of no approval and no permits are handled by your actual code officers, then you should be, and you have our code module, then you should be opening a code investigation. Short story. If not, if you don't have our code module and or no delegation, then you would use the in-house investigation record to record your time and work up and until the requirement maybe ultimately becomes buy the permit. Your requirement is to tell them they must buy a permit, they have to stop work, or, whatever the case is. Okay. Any questions about the record types? No. Okay. I'm going to create my new web. Selecting the tracking record type, that's the permit application record type. It's going to open an intake form. Get a few more seconds here to let it load. Over Teams, things are much more bogged down and slower, unfortunately, to load. Almost there. There it is. Okay. I'm going to maximize this window. I do suggest you do that because some things get kind of smashed in together until the window is maximized. They're still touching, but it's things are a little bit more readable and so on. You don't have to maximize, but just a note. All right, start from top to bottom. We did use a Public Works record when I did recent training, refresher training for the Acela 101 reviews. However, I'm going to go into much more detail here. So just a note on that. The light blue-gray banners are key, especially if you're new to Acela. It tells you which sections are required. Not required. 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 Not required. And so on. So the blue-gray banners are key for you to kind of learn what segments of the intake are required at intake in order for you to kick off a new Public Works application for permit. Of course, the record detail section is required. Then within any required section, the red stars are required fields. So we have to specifically fill in the red starred field. Whatever you decide to put in description, scope of work is completely up to you. I do suggest to agencies, however, that they repeat what the application is for in the description of work. See? Gosh, I cannot type today. Just example, I am not a Public Works person specifically, so bear with me. Just some level of description of work as per their application form. Again, repeating I do highly suggest, just as best practice, that you repeat or include the application type, because remember, in Public Works, you have one record type to represent all your different kinds of applications. Now, further down in the application form, I'm jumping a little bit, but you do get to customize this application type dropdown. So note, you are going to distinctly identify the application type, but that is a little bit more buried into the record details, whereas description of work shows at the record list level. So when I am looking at the record list, description of work shows bird's eye view right at the top. I can see what the different applications are for based on what's been entered here. Now, you can see just spatially, I only get to see so many characters, right? I don't get to see, any sort of, volumes of paragraphs or anything like that. I only get to see maybe about 50 or 60 characters here and maybe 30 or 40 here for project name. But I don't get to see the application type at the record list level. ACELA does not allow us to expose that piece of information at this view. And the record list, oops, Sharon, can you mute, please? Just a side note there. I don't think you're muted. And so at the record list, or the record list is going to be a page you use every day, all day long to access the different Public Works permits and applications that you've taken in. So being able to see maybe at this level what the specific application type is might be extremely helpful for you. I'm going to jump back into my app. By the way, they're just two different windows. So if you have an app started and you get a phone call or whatever, you need to look up a different record to answer the phone call, you can minimize your intake screen and come in here and, search for a specific record or search for it through the record list, finish your phone call, and come back to your intake. A lot of people don't realize that they are handled as separate windows. And so it doesn't mean that you have to close an intake to take a phone call or do something else in the system. So project name. This is another place that we do highly recommend that you include the specific application type. Oh, why can't I? Yeah. Now here, this would not be scope of work. So if you want to put the application type only in the project name and not include it in the description of work, you are very welcome to do so. But I would highly suggest that you are minimally putting it in the project name field, if not in both. In the description of work will print on every single permit. So if you have the application type included here, of course, it's going to be printed on the permit. But also print on the permit is the application type from this dropdown. I just want to give you all the information so that you can make the best decision for your agency on where you want to include application type information. Project name also shows at the record list. So if you elected to only put the app type in the project name field and not include it in description of work, you would be fine. You would have a way to quickly ascertain what kind of application it was without having to fully open the record. Okay, you can. We did also learn this in Public Works and in planning in particular, is that a lot of agencies like to assign the whole record. And what I mean by assign the record, this is for workload identification. That's all that this assign to segment is for. This does not assign inspections, and this does not assign workflow tasks. They're mutually exclusive. There are two different types of assignment for two different reasons. This allows you to assign the entire record to an individual person. Now I'm in Marion County Staging. now you might not use this level of assignment. This might not be of interest to you. So it just kind of depends on how you want to manage stuff. What this means, let's talk like Marion County or planning too, because I want to kind of just at least share the same kind of training because it does apply to planning as well. Side note, that this implies that Max is responsible for seeing this application through. Doesn't mean he's going to be the one doing all the inspections. Doesn't mean he's going to be the one signing off all the workflow. But it does mean that he is the person of record responsible for seeing this record through to completion. Managing kind of the processing aspect of it. Now, that is not in lieu of a permit tech or a front counter type person. I'm not suggesting that either. It doesn't mean administratively they're totally in charge of it, but it means there's some level of accountability within the work team that Max is kind of the person of record to complete this record. Issue it, deny it, whatever the case might be. At the end of the day, if I were using this type of assignment as a boss, for instance, I would assume that I would look to Max to find out why maybe this isn't issued and it's just sitting, or, you know, whatever the case might be. It's essentially the person responsible at a workload level. We do have workload reporting built into the software. So if you are, in fact, using this type of total record assignment for workload purposes, we do have reporting that will spit out the, you know, what records are Max's and what records got assigned to Kelly. And how many does Max have versus how many Kelly has. How long is Max stuff taking? How long is Kelly's stuff taking, so to speak? Okay. So whether you use this is not required, but whether you use this or not is up to you. And I just want to be clear, the distinction that it is not about assigning inspections. Those have to be assigned separately at the time of scheduling, and is not about assigning workflow tasks. Those have to be assigned at the time of workflow. Okay. I do have to minimally have a parcel on a Public Works and or planning record type. They are parcel-based modules. And that's because a lot of times the work that takes place in Public Works and in planning is about an undeveloped parcel. No address if there's no structure on the parcel. So you do have the option of course, including an address. It's not required minimally to kick off a record in Public Works and or planning. But if there is an address, if there is a structure on the property, I would absolutely include the address. All this is telling you is that it is not required as a minimum to create a new Public Works application. And again, the reason for that is it might be an undeveloped parcel. So we can enter either a parcel number. However, if it does have a structure on it and it's addressed, you could search by address. Either or, if there is an address involved, it could be easier sometimes to search by address. That's up to you. Either or is going to kind of get you. I don't know if they have this, our fake parcel, but let's look. They probably might not. No. But I do know they have a parcel called right of way, or they should. We also in Public Works, now would be the time opportunity to talk about that. We do offer you the option of configuring some named parcels. And what that means is a lot of times, usually the big one is right away. For a lot of agencies, not all of you, because I did hear some feedback from some agencies, the last refresher training I did, a lot of you for right of way do not attach a numbered tax lot to work in the right of way. So we will minimally create a named parcel for you called right of way. However, you can have more than one type of right of way. I'm going to go ahead and search. Remember that when I'm adding address parcel owner, I have to search to match it to our property data that's already loaded to your jurisdiction. You cannot just create a record, Public Works, planning, building, anywhere. You cannot create a record that does not have a validated address, or parcel. And the reason that we manage property data that way, that we have the agency send us property data with some sort of frequency, monthly typically, most agencies send us property updates. That includes updates or changes to parcels, addresses, and ownership. Most agencies send us those updates about once a month or quarterly. And so we're perpetually loading that to keep agencies up to date for changes in their property data, most often changes in ownership, but sometimes changes in parcels, parcels, new stuff annexed in, parcels are split, et cetera, right? And so you have to validate the property information that you're attaching to any application. You can't just free type it in. So in this case, I searched in Marion County for right-of-way. They happen to have, well, I don't know why they have two, but they happen to have two different types of right-of-way. I don't know why this is duplicated, but we're in staging. But they have general right-of-way, and then they specifically break out right-of-way utility. In this case, this is an application for right-of-way utilities in the right-of-way. So I am going to specifically select that right-of-way utility. Parcel. They have given it an owner. Essentially, it is the county. No address because it's right-of-way. So I've now pulled a parcel and an owner, it's thinking, into my application. Why didn't it pull in the owner? Let me try that again. I'm going to go ahead and checkbox my right-of-way. I'm going to delete it. And I'm going to search for it again. Because I did select, let me stretch my screen out a little bit. Oh, no issues there. I mean, it's a full list. Oh, Marion County must have something going on here. I still didn't get my owner. All right, one more time. Oh, sorry. Let me just search real quick. Guess a little extra practice here, huh? I'm going to go ahead and select just my right-of-way general, just so we're not kind of stuck here. Select it here this time. Oh, okay. Stacy, can you make just a little note about that? The GIS object list. It might be part of their problem in Marion County right now. Okay, so I've added my parcel with an owner. This, let's just say, is an undeveloped parcel, no address. I can add multiple parcels, so I could search and add a second parcel or a third or fourth, doesn't matter, however many. The only thing is you do have to indicate a single primary parcel, meaning whatever everything should kind of roll up to, and that is pulled into the permit report. Owner, I can also have multiple owners. A lot of properties are owned by more than one party, maybe owned by a trust and an individual or whatever the case might be. I can have multiples of any of the property information if that is appropriate to the application. I just have to do a second search for the second parcel, and so on. Applicant required. In this case, there's some quick buttons. If the applicant is the same party as the owner, I can pull in the owner. Or if the applicant is the licensed professional, but remember, we haven't got to licensed professional yet. So if the applicant is a licensed professional, our best practice training is skip the applicant section for a moment and scroll down here. There's agent for applicant, and then here's licensed professional section. Licensed professionals or contractors are not required on Public Works records to create a new application or even for the life of the permit. It is not the same type of requirement as exists for building. So whether a licensed professional is involved in the Public Works application process or not is is up to you, depends on the scope of work generally. You know, in this case, they're doing utilities. I would suspect maybe there's, some sort of electrical contractor involved. I do not know the name of any, I'm going to just say Salem Electric here. Notice when I'm searching by business name, if I'm searching by name of an owner, by name of a business, by name of anything, use the wildcards for smart searching, what this search, if I were to read it out loud, means I'm looking for Salem Electric, but any wording can occur before the word Salem and any wording could occur after the word electric. I could even go so far as to put one here, which means in between the word Salem, in between and the word electric, there could be even other wording like an ampersand or Salem Commercial Electric, for example. You know, so there are other ways to search that are very smart that help you find things so much faster and easier, because there's all kinds of things in a business name and all kinds of things, let me tell you, in a property owner name. There are trusts, there are abbreviations, there are ampersands, there are sometimes married, some counties do married people in a single owner record, Tim and Marcia Miller, rather than a Tim Miller owner and separately a Marcia Miller owner. It's just all over the board when it comes to property owner format. And we have found that because of all the different licensing bodies, all of these different, licensing bodies, architects, landscape architects, land surveyors, engineers. I mean, because of all of the different sources, we've also found that business name is just all over the place. So, smart searching. I'm trying to narrow my search to say it's an electrical contractor called Salem Electric. I'm searching for it. I also have to validate any licensed professionals on the record. Oh, look at that. Oh, I don't know what I did for my first search. I hit it twice, so I might have made it blip out. It is found Salem Electric. They're a C licensed business. This is their license number. They are not expired. So I can add them to my application. Typically, you are going to search a licensed professional, honestly, by their license number. 90% of the time. But occasionally, and like today, I wasn't prepared. I didn't go grab a license number. So I had to search by the business name, or by the business name, forgive me. But this license number is CCB. No, it doesn't say that. And this license number is all the BCD professional licenses and all other non-CCB licensing, like architects and engineers and landscape architects and surveyors and so on. This is only CCB. Okay, so business license, don't let it fool you. This is about other professional licensing outside of CCB. And it does help that if you put in the license number and you put in the license type, but sometimes that might cut some results out for you that you might really need to see. So if you're searching by a license, I suggest you strictly search by the license and don't try to narrow it by the type. These are just tips and tricks. So now I've added my licensed professional. I can't forget, I need to come back up here to applicant. And they are also the applicant. So if the licensed professional is the applicant, fill in the LP section, licensed professional section first. If they are participating in this application, fill it out first, and then just come back up and use the quick button up here. It just saves you data entry. That's all. Okay. Minimally, there has to be a phone number. There is a phone number on file. Obviously, we blank out all the emails because while we're doing training, we don't want to be emailing all these people. So I am going to go ahead and put in my email for the purpose of training today for Salem Electric as the licensed professional. Notice it isn't required for email, but there's so much email functionality throughout the software. It saves you volumes of work if you have the opportunity to collect email. Agent for applicant, the section is not required. This would just be your opportunity to add any other people attached to the project that you need. And you can add more than one. So if there's a project manager, a local project manager for Salem Electric that you are going to be working with, you know, you can put their information in here. Now here, this does not have to be validated. And then I could put in, you know, Joe's fake email, right? Okay, for instance, I'm not going to put an email in here. But if I had a local project manager or somebody more on the local side that is my direct contact, maybe as an agent for the applicant, I could manually add them. They don't have to be searched to be validated. However, you can, minimizing, go to pages, all pages. There is a contacts reference library that you can build as an agency. If there are local professionals, offices, people you do business with on the regular, you can start to build a contacts library. You would add them to the contacts page directly one time. Then when you are creating new applications, then you can just search for them. Say, Joe, somebody we do business with regularly from Salem Electric. I can just put in Joe Miller and search the contacts library if I'd added him, say, you know, a year ago already. That's optional, but I just want you to know that that functionality does exist. That's why you see a search button here. But contacts are not required to be validated to create, you know, on an application form. Meaning I don't have to search for them and find a match in order to put them on the record. I only have to do that with licensed professionals and property data. All right. Then the Public Works intake section, very short and sweet. Some agencies are a little surprised by that, and others are like, perfect, because we don't want to have to collect too much immediately at intake. We want to be able to create the record regardless and get the conversation started. And that is what we heard when we developed this module, again, with the 5 cities and counties that we worked with when we originally designed the Public Works module. We were told a lot of times Public Works collects information post-intake, or they're continuously kind of developing the project file, the project file. So let's talk about what's included here and the details of what everything kind of represents. In Public Works in particular, we use something called service area. And these are the different functional areas that we provide this module for, which is Public Works Development Services and Engineering. So the different kinds of permitting, speaking kind of high-level grouping, we offer a right-of-way service area, right-of-way easement, of course, erosion and sediment control, which is your grading and fill, and other types of erosion sediment control. Marion County in particular has a chemical-based dust control product that they allow, and they only allow that singular product. They require you to pull a permit to put it on the dirt. all kinds of different, pieces, moving parts that you might permit for under these broad categories or service areas. Of course, driveway, sidewalk, curb cut, that's paramount to new development and ongoing development. A lot of times people want to add a second driveway, for the shop. They just built a shop and they need a second approach and driveway to get to the shop, right? Or whatever the case might be. And then our newest service area, requested by Marion County, in fact, is stormwater permitting. So minimally, one service area has to be selected that is associated to this application type. They are applying in my example for utilities in the right of way. So it seems pretty obvious I would check right of way. However, certain application types, this is a fully custom list. We're going to be sending you a submittal and asking you what specific application types you want to permit for in your agencies. Certain application types might invoke more than one service area, and that's totally allowed. Let's example, if this application was major construction, it's probably going to involve all three of those, depending on the scope of work. Maybe even that one, depending. Right? maybe not that one, it just depends. Right? But this type of application is probably going to invoke some association with more than one service area. An event, for sure, right of way. An event's probably just right of way. Look, a combination. I don't know in Marion County what combination means, but maybe it's all three in the way that it kind of sounds. I don't know. They do annual permitting for stormwater. On-site stormwater. In my example, though, let's come back to my example. I'm going to pick a right-of-way public utility company application type. That's the only red star, other than the picking at least a minimum of one service area, if not more, depending on what's associated to this kind of application. These service areas you'll see are going to actually kind of pan out to different tabs on the Public Works record that offers you different areas to include information. And then whatever service area you select here will be when the permit is generated and issued. The scripting will come look at what service areas you've checked, and it will pull information from the corresponding tab on the record. So if I selected all three of these, when the permit is issued, in seconds, the scripting is going to go look at the right-of-way tab, the erosion sediment control tab, and the driveway sidewalk curb cut tab on the record. For any information you filled in, whatever you filled in on those corresponding tabs will be included in the permit. So service area has a direct relationship to what information is displayed on the permit report. I can determine if it's public or private if you want to record that for reporting purposes. The more data you include, the more data you get out. I am shocked, as many years I've been here, agencies submit tickets saying they ran a specific report and there's like no information on it. Something's broken. The report's broken. And so I go and I look and I do the research and I'm like, you guys don't fill it in. We can't show you data that you didn't record. And then they're like, oh, I thought all this time somebody was recording it or doing this or doing that. And I'm like, no. Look back at your last 2 years of records and nobody's filled in public-private. So the more you fill in that is helpful and meaningful to the specific kind of application, the better. There is no structure involved in this application. So I would not fill this section or fill this drop-down in. Doesn't apply. No red star. There's no separate accessory building involved either. I could fill in the type of project, a type of work if I wanted. If it was applicable, if it felt, like it made sense to the type of work, to what they're doing. Then there's a detailed project purpose description that is required. And so many people say, Kelly, wait a minute, we filled that in at the top. We filled that in right here. And if that's all you want to fill in, highlight it, copy it, and paste it here. Control V, Control C to copy, Control V to paste it, if that's it. Because this is a required field. Red star. However, I can tell you that most agencies, I'd say it's kind of split down the middle. Some of them just do the copy paste thing. Others actually give, it's 10,123, lineal feet of conduit. Sometimes between main and third, sometimes agencies add more like that. Detail. Do you have to? No. You could just copy in the scope of work and call it done. But I want you to know you do have the opportunity to go into more detail. Then lastly, add intake, straight add application. Depending on what this permit is for, what the application type is, internally you can choose to allow inspections prior to this even issuing. I believe Marion County does inspections on their stormwater stuff before it issues. They do almost like a pre-inspection, and then it issues, and then they do like a final or something. So if you are also, depending on the app type, if it differs by the application type, like a driveway access permit, probably can't do inspections on it till it issues, till it's even approved, till the plans are approved, right? Placement, how long it's going to be, how big it's going to be, does it go over, culvert or, whatever, those kinds of considerations that Public Works has. You would maybe allow inspections on an access application, but maybe on stormwater you would. You have this option. By the way, this option exists, this checkbox, post intake. So if you missed checking it here at intake, it's available to you post intake as well if you missed it. Now for Public Works specifically, you have the option of recording and planning, I think planning, but for sure Public Works. This was designed for Public Works. Time tracking, you have the option to record time for anything done on the record. And that's because, again, when we developed this module, we did learn that Public Works stuff is project-based. And a lot of times you have to record all of your time to the project. If that's the case, you can not only do that here at intake, but you can do it for the life of the record. Time tracking is available on this record from the get-go. If I needed to record my time, I would add a row. How much time? Quarter of an hour. Today. By the way, it defaults into today, defaults into my user, because I'm creating this row right now. This is administrative. I'm recording it to Project County 1050p, or to the project code of 1050p. Just made that number up. And the notes are intake. If you need to record time on to a specific project account on a given project for your jurisdiction, time tracking is available from intake forward. If additionally the parcel is in the floodplain and you want or need to record some details about that it might impact the scope of work, might impact how you plan review it, might impact how you inspect it, then you can also record additional floodplain information about that parcel. The base flood elevation, the benchmark. Now, none of these are required, so maybe you only have a few pieces of this. If you need to record it, want to record it, if it has some impact on your desktop process, on how you're going to process this app, meaning if it makes a difference to what you're going to do with this application, then maybe you should record some floodplain information if this parcel's in the floodplain. So we would know if it's in the floodplain, but we might not know all these details. You know, I could record that there's fill, you know, I don't know, it's in the floodway. These are the national floodplain values. So I could give it like a zone, for instance. The value of the existing structure, proposed improvement, maybe the value of this improvement, you know, is, you know, 620,000. If there's some, you know, if this information has bearing on how you're going to handle an application, then you should record floodplain. And by the way, it's available here at intake, but it's also available post-intake. So if you do not know this information right at intake, you know, they're standing with you over the counter, you don't know this yet, you have to go look at GIS maps and so on, you can record it post-intake. If you record it at all, that is your internal decision. I can also attach a document right at intake, but I can attach documents for the life of the record. At intake, remember, they can't apply through the e-permitting website. They have to apply with you. Over the counter, by mail, by email, by fax, whatever you allow. They at least have to initiate an application through you. And so sometimes, depending on how they've applied, their documents aren't electronic yet. Either you need to scan them in, or they need to email them over to you, or they need to upload them on the website. Because remember, as soon as you create a new application, they can use the website for everything else. They can use the website to pay any fees, intake or issuance, or anything along the way that you invoice. They can attach, upload any documents, maps, plans, revisions, details, specs, anything, and they can schedule inspections. Okay. So I'm not going to attach any document at this time. I'm going to go ahead and submit my application so we can jump into the application specifics here. It's probably going to take us just a second for this to create our new record. Hopefully I didn't miss anything. You will not get this pop-up window. I'm an admin on the software unless there is a problem. And just a little bit of tip training. If you do get this kind of pop-up, we call it EMSE. It literally says EMSE in the top corner. Typically, and I'm just saying typically, if you scroll down to the bottom, if there was some sort of error, by the way, at the top, it'll be red. It'll say action canceled or failed or something red. That's your cue. First, it popped up. Second, you see a red kind of failure type message. If you do, typically, if you scroll clear down to the bottom, the error is usually in this last kind of paragraph. So just a little tip across the entire software. That would be kind of a global thing for you to know in general. However, that isn't the case. I'm just an admin, so it showed me this message to tell me all the scripting that it did. You don't need to care about that. After you create any new record in the system, doesn't matter the module, Public Works, Planning, Building, On-Site, doesn't matter. It will ask you if you want to preload the record with any inspections. Now, we will minimally preload the final inspection to every Public Works application. And the final that we will automatically load is the 9995. So when you create any new record in the software, you will see this already here, or it'll already be set up for the record. You won't see it, but it will be there. Once I say I'm done, it will be on the record. So just of note, minimally, this inspection will be on the record automatically from intake. And that is a safety net so that this application cannot be closed prematurely without minimally getting a final inspection. Bare bones. Now, there are all kinds of different finals in the software. I'm going to go ahead and show you. I'm going to open our inspection brochure really quickly. If you're not familiar with it, oops, I should have opened the PDF. Sorry. I should open the PDF, easier to look at. So for Public Works, which is on the first page, or no, second page, sorry, there. For Public Works, here, we offer all of these inspections. If you do not already have a copy of our inspection brochure, we'll make sure and get it mailed out to you as we move through this project. We'll probably be emailing it just by default so everybody has it. This is all the inspections in the entire software for building and for other record types as well. However, Public Works has the largest inspection offering of any other module. So this isn't the end of it. There's more. This is a trifold document, and I know you kind of can't visualize that per se, but you know, it folds here, it folds here, it folds into a brochure, right? And so this is the back panel. So look how many more are here for Public Works. Tons of inspection types. And just because it's easier to show here than it is in the intake form or the record, because the window Acela offers is kind of much smaller, it's easier to see a giant list like this. There are multiple kinds of finals available to you in Public Works. For kind of each service area, remember the service areas are, you know, the right-of-way, erosion sediment control, driveway, curb cut, sidewalk, and stormwater. So, you know, here's a final erosion right here, kind of hovering right there. There's a grading final, think erosion and sediment control. There's final stormwater, and a 6303 right there. There's final retaining walls that has to do with erosion and sediment control. Final site development. Final floodplain, because depending on how much floodplain impacts your desktop process or not, you may need to have a floodplain manager or somebody do a floodplain inspection. There are finals for the driveway, curb cut. So here's final driveway. I swear there's final. What am I not seeing? I could swear there was, oh, there's a ADA ramp final. Oh, and private street final inspection. So some of them, final isn't the first word, it's maybe the last word. So anyways, you kind of get the idea. There are a lot of different final approach right there. There and final driveway, and then on to the next page, final curb, final pavement, and you just kind of keep scrolling through here. Final right of way. And then the master final, though, the final inspection type that literally will close the record upon approval is only the 9995. So I could schedule final right of way and final sidewalk, for example, or final, you know, whatever, some other type of final. Those are only considered sub-finals. They will not close the record. The only inspection upon approval that will literally close the record at sign-off is 9995. And it's automated. So as soon as 9995 is added to a record, scheduled and signed off, the whole record will close automatically. Any of these other sub-finals, if you choose to schedule them, because sometimes they're more meaningful, like maybe a project has multiple things going on in the scope of work, and there are different maybe inspectors that might look at one thing versus another. Maybe the person that does the final erosion control inspection is legitimately a whole different person than does the final approach inspection. So you can schedule those separately. But at the end of the day, I need you to know that up and until somebody schedules 9995, the record will not close. So To some agencies, that means they don't use any of the other subfinals. That's fine. You can choose to do that. You can choose to only schedule this one and call it a day. But some agencies want that level of detail because different inspectors maybe are doing the work. That's up to you. I don't know why I have a date there. So I can choose to preload those if I wanted to. I could select final erosion control, use a single arrow to move it over as a pre-pended inspection, and then I can pen these. Yes, Addie.
So to clarify, you're saying that the 9995 final PW inspection, is that the equivalent of going to workflow and hitting inspection process complete? It will do that step automatically?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
100%. Good question. Great question. So she's absolutely correct. That's a good question. In the workflow process, it will finish the workflow on behalf of a permit tech or somebody else having to manually sign those off. 9995 at approval by the inspector will finish the workflow automatically and close the record. That's an automation that we offer, which saves 2 to 3 clicks, and it saves the permit tech or front counter person of having to just even monitor that. A lot of time savings for staff there. So I can make a decision though I can elect to preload this record with a final erosion control inspection, which means if I'm taking the time at intake to preload it, to pend it, it means we want it scheduled. However, I can put it on the record all day long as a permit tech. It does not mean the applicant is going to make sure it gets scheduled. So I want you to know that just because an inspection might be pended, it still only is presented as a suggestion. It does not mean they will schedule it. And they might just schedule 9995. Your inspector goes out, signs off 9995. Guess what? Because 6050 was pended on the record and never done or scheduled, it will prevent sign off on 9995. So I caution you, pending inspections kind of suggestively at intake can be a mixed bag. It can hinder your ability to sign off records in that nice, clean, automated functionality where they schedule 9995, inspector goes out, signs it off, and it'll fail to close the record because 6050 is still sitting there suggestively and nobody scheduled it. Okay, so I'm going to actually remove both of those. If you don't want to pend anything, because remember 9995 is going to add to the record automatically in the background, then I simply cancel out of this window. And I'm dropped back into our jurisdiction. Oftentimes, Acela is terrible. I think I've mentioned this in a couple trainings at their refresh rate. Notice my new record is not showing. I just got done creating it. It's not here. Force a refresh in the upper right-hand corner. Our new record is now available for me to jump into and to do further work on. So I'm going to focus time because Acela 101 has covered various global functionality. And we've done review training sessions on that. I'm going to focus on the numbered tabs right here, in particular for the purpose of our Public Works training. See how these line up to be the service areas that we looked at, those check boxes. By the way, O1 General Info, I'm going to check it. I'm going to select it, and I'm going to jump to that tab. That tab is a repeat of intake, the intake pieces. It's all here. There's that allow inspections prior to permit issuance. So if I missed it at intake, I can check it here if I need to. I can make any changes, edits, or corrections if I need to, including the app type, for instance. Notice I checkbox the right-of-way service area. That means the system is going to expect me to fill in something on the corresponding tab, numbered tab. Now, what I choose to fill in is up to me. What is meaningful to this kind of application is up to you. You know what I mean? And so depending on if all of these were checked, the system is going to expect that I filled in something on erosion and sediment, on driveway, curb pit, sidewalk, and on right-of-way. These service area checkboxes define your permit, because it will, if I missed, let's say I only checked right-of-way and I should have also checked this. If I forgot, even though I filled in information over here, the permit report will not pick it up. These service areas explicitly drive the population of your permit report. So I really want to emphasize how very important they are. So right of way, I'm just going to go over right of way tab first, but we're going to look at every tab here. So right of way, I can select if plans were submitted, if that's a checkbox, if it was helpful to know or to document, if they're placing new facilities in the right of way. In this case, I'm going to say yes. If they're repairing or maintaining existing, the type of right of way. This is utility. By the way, these values are model. These are not customized. Unless there is something glaringly missing, which you can submit to us through a help desk ticket, we do not edit these. We deliver these same values to the 100+ participating agencies. Work performed by, in this case, it's being performed by a utility company. Is there insurance or indemnity on file? Yes or no? Maybe you don't care about this. Maybe when it's utilities, you don't care. It's not required, but if it is, you can record it. Is there a security deposit involved? Is it a bond, cash, check, credit card, or not applicable? If I say bond, it doesn't require it, but you should probably put in the bond type. Is it a maintenance bond, a performance bond, sidewalk, warranty? These are for event, right-of-way event. I know that because I helped design this module. So if it is event-related right-of-way, generally you would be filling in these pieces. Is there a traffic control plan included? What warning devices will they be using? By the way, this is text. And this field has actually quite a few characters, even though it's kind of smaller looking. And is there an after-hours safety plan included? And then I just have a free text field for anything else. By the way, any text box with the three, I don't know if you can kind of see them, two little tiny lines in the corner can be manually stretched to read whatever's in there. He pasted a big chunk of information in there. I could stretch it to read it or whatever the case might be. If it's utilities related right of way, is there a franchise agreement on file? Or the name of any other utilities if it's a joint project? Is there a hook-on agreement on file, direct, indirect, or other? And any added intent or details for the utility? You know, I might be say like, oops, update to, I'm just making silliness up here, high tech. Is there an easement involved? If there is it use or vacation? Is it agreement related? What's the purpose of the use or vacation? Are there any special conditions? And then the from and to date and start and end times. If it's encroachment related, from and to date, start and end times. If it is system connections to infrastructure related. Ooh. Stacy, if you don't mind, can you make me just another little note? They're missing the water. They're missing water. I'd have to look in production to see if it's there because this is staging, but there are 3 bubbles here. They're missing one. Storm sewer, sandy sewer, and there is water. unless we took it off because they added stormwater, but anyway. And then there's a free text field for any added information or details you wish to record. Notice no red stars anywhere to be found here. This is all voluntary, all based on what your agency deems to be required information based on the application type. Now I'm going to look at all the other tabs too. I'm going to jump back to the general info tab. Remember, it is a repeat of the intake form, but there's more. You can also post intake record, if applicable, total square footage of a structure. This is all about a structure. If there's a structure, if it's important that you record information about the structure related to what they're applying for, you can record the total square footage, the number of stories, the building height, bathroom, bedroom, occupant. This is being changed to occupant to be more accurate. And then the building lot size, and it does tell you to include the lot of measure and if a soils report was required. You can also record, generally speaking, depending on the application type, if there's engineered fill, the fill volume in cubic yards, the impervious surface area, if it's a flood hazard, landslide hazard, or has a retaining wall. Again, high level, globally, if there's public works information to be recorded, if this rolls up to an individual project, if it involves storm sewer, if it involves sidewalk or any street improvements at kind of a project level. And then if setback information is necessary, depending on the type of application, that can also be recorded. None of this required. It's all additionally available in a flexible kind of environment, depending on the application type and scope of work. Okay, had I selected driveway, sidewalk, curb cut, this again, the system would expect I filled in something on this number 2 tab. For sidewalk details, the number, if it's a repair, the number of panels, the feet or footage, if it includes an ADA ramp or a parklet. By the way, my Milwaukee people, these bottom 2 radio buttons were added at the request of Milwaukee. And then Milwaukee just didn't participate at that time. You wanted Public Works. We installed it. But then the person that was doing it at that time ended up leaving the city suddenly, and we didn't get to finish. But these are from Milwaukee. So, side note. Curb cut, the number of curb cuts. If it's a driveway, the category of construction. Is it ag, commercial, industrial, or residential, or other? Anytime you get it put in an other, it opens up a free text field for you to describe that. The type of work on the driveway, is it a change in access, a mod to access, new access, removal, or temporary? And then all the details about the driveway, width and feet, length, proposed, width and length, and the turnaround type. All of these are text fields, so it can be alphanumeric. The current access surface, and then or proposed. And then any level of greater detail about the driveway description. Is it a curb street? Does it involve a culvert? If so, what's the diameter? And what are the vision clearance kind of pieces to the driveway? Sight distance left and right, the grade up or down, and the percentage. If I had selected erosion and sediment control service area, it would expect I would be filling in something here on number 4. A free text field for just anything extra you'll need or want to add. Remember the little stretchy lines there. The nature of the activity. For erosion and sediment control, is it commercial, highway, industrial, multifamily, residential, other single-family utilities? The construction, stormwater, runoff, flow to. Creek, ditch, drainage, infiltration, municipal storm, other, or stream. The worksite area height, depth, width, length. the total construction project area, total disturbed area, and the total acreage. Existing surface material, replacement material, or backfill. The excavation in cubic yards, the imported fill in cubic yards, and if there's any dust control, and if so, what type. This dust control was a Marion County request, an enhancement request. And we granted it and we added it to the entire Public Works module for everybody. They use a product, and I'm sure I'm pronouncing it wrong, called lignin, or I'm not sure how you pronounce that, but they only allow that dust control product. You can record if it's hillside, includes a hillside, wetland, swell, pipe, and if there's a control mechanism, if it's HOA responsible, private or public. And then if you're required to do MS4 reporting, we recently enhanced this because the MS4 reporting requirements were changed. So you record if the site is part of a common plan of development, and then the land disturbance by acreage. We then also have an MS4 report built into the model that will look at this information and spit out data for you, assuming you filled it in when required. Lastly is the newest service area, which is stormwater. You can record if, by checkbox, stormwater calculations were submitted, if a civil site plan was submitted, or if a percolation test result was submitted. Then additionally recording impervious surface area, existing impervious surface area being replaced, and the proposed total impervious surface area. Again, this stormwater service area was an enhancement request for Marion County. They do annual stormwater permits, and they record, this was the information they requested for stormwater permitting. Okay, fees. The fees that we build for you are whatever you provide to us. So whatever your adopted public works and or engineering fees are, we will build them out for you as provided from your adopted fees. So if you have not already sent us your public works adopted fees, we need you to send those as soon as possible. We are actually, as project managers, we are actually hoping to configure fees here in the next few weeks, because you need to test them once we've configured them in your individual agency. If you are an agency that doesn't have Public Works installed yet, then we will configure the fees once the module is installed to your production agency, which is supposed to happen towards the end of this, or at the beginning of January sometime, in the first couple weeks. So those things should kind of happen right close to each other. Again, if you haven't sent your Public Works adopted fees, send them now. And please be clear, if you don't want us to build everything that's included under Public Works fees for the purpose of what you want to use the software for, because we do have an agency or two that use the Public Works module only for their right-of-way permitting. They do all their other Public Works permits manually on paper, but their right-of-way permits is all they use the software for. If that's the case, you need to be clear with us, only configure the right-of-way fees. You know, maybe highlight or draw a box around the section, scan it in, send it over to us. So please just be clear what fees you want built. If it's all of them, great. If it's only a few of them, please be clear on that. Once we do that, we'll configure the fees. They'll be available for you to add to any of your records. The fee, if you collect the fee at intake, you might want to add the fee as you create the record. It needs to be invoiced before it can be paid. And you can request payment through the workflow just like you can in building. Yeah, Alicia.
I was wondering, in the beginning at the intake stage, you had marked like time tracking.
Yes.
And once the record is created, which tab does that information?
Excellent question. thank you for asking too, because a lot of people don't realize it lives under custom tables. I'm going to check that. And as soon as I select the time tracking, my entry will be displayed and I can add continuous entries.
Is there a
Great.
way to link that if we're charging hourly? Is there a way to link that to the fees?
No, unfortunately.
Okay.
But it should be available here for reference for anybody that is managing the fees. That's any consolation. And then otherwise, remember, I think I filled in a few things on floodplain as well. So if I were to select floodplain, I would see the couple of items that I had selected on floodplain. That's a great question. Thanks, Alicia, because a lot of people have no idea because the tab on this one is not very helpful. Custom tables, what is that, you know? And again, to see the values, I actually have to select that particular item and to add new, you know, maybe now I've spent time today. I'm still doing, you know, I don't know, maybe I'm doing some processing and it's still to that project, you know, that the time should be charged. And this time I'm, you know, I'm collecting additional documents and intake fees, you know, whatever would be appropriate. And then I save my entry. That's a great question. So back to the fees tab, I'm charging them $100 permit fee. Now, if you collect intake, if you collect your fees at intake, which I highly suggest, as the financial pro on the team, I always suggest to agencies collect your money at the door so that you're not chasing money later on down the road, because occasionally, you know, whatever they submit might get denied. And then they're mad about it, or they feel like they spent a lot of time and, oh, I mean, trust me, we've heard it all. Oh, bad government, so on, so on, so on, you know, and then sometimes maybe it becomes harder to collect your money. You're chasing it at that point. So it is always best practice, even fiscally, to collect as per the, you know, what's appropriate, to collect whatever you need to collect at the door at the time of application, ideally, or close to application, or before you do review, or before you issue it, and so on, those kind of things, right? Of course, though, for public works and planning, that is completely up to you and your process. So I'm also going to jump, let me look real quick here. I just want to make sure I'm covering all my bases. Yeah, I'm going to jump to workflow. I'm not going to spend a ton of time here because the workflow is identical to building. And some of you might go, well, okay, Kelly, we've never even worked in building. All I'm going to cover here is quickly the intake portion here. If I have everything I need for intake, then I can make this ready for plan review. If I got everything at the door that we require as an agency, and that's up to you locally, what do you require, say, for a right-of-way utility permit at the door? Did they give you the maybe 2 sets of paper plans or whatever it is you require, or did they submit electronic plans and you're going to attach those now to documents, or they're going to upload them this afternoon? Excuse me, using the website, you know, whatever it is you collect or required intake. Once you receive it all, ready for plan review. If you didn't get what you needed and they're already gone, you know, they came in maybe physically office, you created a new app, you know, there were people waiting in line. Darn, you missed that they didn't give you a site plan. Additional info needed, like we covered in some of the workflow training previously, will kick off an automated email to the applicant of record, and whatever you put in the comment field will be the body of the email. You know, we have received your, you know, right away utility application. However, you didn't submit the required site plan. You submit this document using the link provided in this email. So remembering that. Oopsie, trying to say thank you. You know, and because you can't see it, but remember any email being generated out of workflow has what we call a deep link, which is a link directly to their application online. They don't even have to search for it. All they got to do is click the link. And they will be immediately taken to their application online, and they can upload the documents that you've requested there. If I scroll down, you can see who it's going to email to automatically. It's going to email to Kelly. She's the applicant of record. Remember, I put my email in for Salem Electric. If I also want to email it to Salem Electric, let's pretend we had an email for them. We could elect to do so, but no matter what, it's going to the applicant of record, whether I want to or not. If I'm asking them for additional information, it makes sense that it's sending an email to the applicant of record as the responsible party. Now, let's say they came in over the counter and you did realize they were missing the site plan and you verbally told them at the counter, you're missing your site plan. I cannot move your application forward to plan review until you submit that. It is still best practice and good form to document that here as well. Because I don't care what you tell them at the counter. Again, this, from my many years of experience in the construction industry across the board, they forget it the minute they walk out the door. A lot of times. Not all the time, but often. So following up with it in writing, in email, and documenting it in the system that you literally told them you were missing the site plan and you requested it. Now it's documented here. And by the way, when you ask for additional information, the clock, kind of so to speak, is paused. It's waiting on them now. Now it's on their time, not your agency. Not counted against your agency because you've documented that. So again, I tell agencies, I don't care what you told them at the door, document it here as well, because then you have that information here. You can lean back on it. You can show, because once I hit this, it's going to send an email to Kelly, and that email is going to be saved in the communications tab. You have proof, you have record that's dated and time-stamped, and in any event that you need that information to fall back on. We never got an email, and why has it been 2 weeks? And shame on you, Yamhill County. You guys always take forever. No, we sent an email to you on the day you submitted your application. And not only that, but as I did tell, Joe, the project manager, that we required a site plan and that I would not be moving this forward to plan review. And you could even say that. We will not be processing your application for plan review up and until this document is received. You could even be that clear. In fact, I suggest you are. And by the way, standard comment library is available to you right here. Additional information needed is a very standardized thing. You can standardize this exact comment by sending us a standard comment to add to your library that says, we have received your XXX application. However, you didn't submit the required XXX documents. Please submit this document, parenthesis S, because maybe it's more, it could be more than one. Using the link provided in this email, we won't be. This is a total standard comment. This is the perfect opportunity for your agency to create kind of a generic comment for when you say additional info needed. Then when you go to standard comments, you go into your jurisdiction, customize standard comments, you select the area, because we create like areas like this for you. We could create an area called intake, all your intake standard comments. I'm pretending here. And you could grab it and drop it into this comment box in one fell swoop, in one single click. And then all you got to do is fill in where we put the placeholders, what kind of application it is, and what type of document or documents are they missing. Easy. Saves you yards of typing. Then it means that everybody's sending a consistent message every time somebody says additional info needed. It will be the same for Amanda as it is for Stephanie, who, no matter who is sending the additional info needed request through workflow, it will read the same from your agency consistently, which is just going to help people comply better versus everybody individually typing this out depending on what information they do or don't include. Maybe you forget to say, use the link provided in the email. Maybe you forget to tell them that you won't be moving them into plan review until it's received. Sometimes those small little omissions of information can create process problems for you. So standardizing those things in standard comment library is ideal. And we have a submittal for that you'll be receiving. Okay, this is going to get sent to Kelly, and ideally she's going to upload the document I asked for, and off we go. I'm not going to send it just to expedite the remainder of our training. So app intake, if they have submitted everything we need, I am going to make it ready for plan review. I save that response or that result. We call those task results. And then it's going to say, okay, permit tech Kelly or front counter person Kelly, whoever's processing the app, whoever that might be in your work group, who needs to review this based on the type of application and the scope of work. By the way, these check all type boxes can be checked to select all and to deselect all. The base review is always this one. At the bare minimum, this, if it does require review, this would be the review as per our design that you would include. We don't care who it is, like what name you attach to this. And don't get too hung up in the naming conventions here. Public Works Development could be anybody in your group. Engineering review, I mean, yes, it says engineering, transportation, yeah, but it doesn't have to be exactly those people. You can use these reviews in whatever way suits your process. So don't get too wrapped around the axle with how we've named them. I mean, they are named generally in terms of what we learned when we developed this module from the agencies that do public works. Also, building and planning can be included. And then just a catch-all, additional review could be anybody else. I know McMinnville has a power and light, I think a power and light board. So Yamhill, you might also work with that group. They're external to the city and county potentially. This additional review would be the review that would be perfect for that. That work group that always participates in your XYZ Public Works permits, you can include them through the additional review tab. All right, so we make a decision, all or none or some or whatever, based on the app type and the scope of work. I save my answer. App intake is now completed. It's in the completed section. It's green. And Public Works Development Review is the only review process I indicated as required for this application. All the other review types are going to be skipped. No engineering, no transportation, no building, no planning, no additional review. Even though they show up next, I have told the system, not required. If you made a mistake, we call that, those checkboxes, by the way, we call that parallel review. The parallel review checkboxes. If as soon as you hit save, you went, oh no, engineering needs to look at this too, you go to task activation, you select any task displayed here, and parallel tasks will be brought up for you again, and then you can make your correction, save your choice, and then cancel out of task activation. Okay. Task activation can be used all the way up until permit issuance. It is specifically only for the review tasks. Now these need to be assigned. Use the assign button. assign the Public Works Development Review to Max. Your staff will be listed, by the way. Minimize his task. I already assigned it. Now I need to go in the engineering review, hit the assign button there, and maybe the engineering review. Oh, I'm waiting for this to hit. My drop down goes to Matt. They could go to the same person. System doesn't care. They just ideally need to be assigned. Once they're assigned, they're available for tracking in the task page. Once anything in the system is assigned, except the record, because remember that total record assignment is strictly for workload reporting. Any of these areas where things are assigned, these are the different assignment areas in Acela. I can assign workflow tasks, inspections, I can assign electronic documents, and I can assign activities. So under workflow, I would say, show me all the active assigned Public Works development reviews. Maybe as a permitted tech, I'm keeping an eye on these by date. I can, by the way, sort any of this information by any of the columns. By the record status. I could sort them by the due date. By the way, due date is the same as assigned date, unless you choose to use due date. Maybe you do 7 days. You brought this in. You can actually set the due date to be 7 days from today. Most agencies don't use due date, so it's the same day. By default, same day, 12/22/22, 10/1/10/1, 4/25, 4/25, January. So sorting them by the date they were assigned. So if I, was a permit tech and I was needing to keep track to make sure applications are continuously moving through the system or being attended to, I would maybe care, like, why has this been sitting? I mean, this is a year. But let's pretend, why is this sitting here a year? I need to get in touch with John and see what's going on. So you can use filters to track the work. Remember, on my filter is about the logged in user. So if I'm Max, every morning I log into Acela, I should go to the task page and I should run the filter for everything assigned to me. And I would see that I just got a new review assigned to me yesterday. And I need to, eventually do that, perform the review. And no address because this is an undeveloped parcel. So I see just some basic record information here across the top. But if I Max, as soon as I click into it, I go to workflow and I look at the Public Works Development Review. It's been assigned to me. I go to the Documents tab and open the electronic documents, or I go to the bin and I pull the paper plans. So there are some non-my filters, like for the permit techs and management, whoever else needs to care about work that's happening on a larger scale. And because the workflow works just like building, as soon as the last plan review task is signed off, the record will move into completeness, which is an administrative only task that allows you to make the record ready for issuance. You do get the opportunity to collect issuance fees at that point too, if that is a place where you would want to collect some money. Maybe you collect it all at the door at intake. Maybe you collect some at intake and some at issuance, like in the building kind of model. That's up to you. Or you collect it all at issuance. Up to you. Completeness will provide the tech with a list of any records that are in completeness that now need to be tended to for issuance. Marion County might have a lot. It looks like it's spinning. Yes, they do. They have 34 app records at the time we copied this into staging that need to be managed. However, now a lot of this stuff has been finalized and done and stuff, because this is just a copied data from months back. But please note, unassigned department tasks, unassigned Public Works plan reviews. So there might be records where stuff didn't get assigned that needs attention, because if it's not assigned and users are using the task page as best practice, which is what we train for, then things that didn't get assigned might be stuck in a black hole. Nobody's looking at them because they didn't get assigned. And sadly, it looks like in Marion County, I'm going to get a big list because it's thinking really hard about unassigned. I think I'm going to back out of this. I'm just going to do a hard refresh, maybe to kill that. And I'm going to go back into my record. By the way, this most recent from Launchpad, most recent like 10 records is so helpful. If your record crashed, if the agency crashed, if you closed it too early and went, oh no, you don't have to search it again. You can pull it up quite quickly if it was something you touched in the last 10 records or 10 sessions. Okay, so we talked about fees. We talked about workflow. As these both get signed off, eventually the record will advance to completeness. Hopefully somebody's tracking records that come into completeness through that filter I just demonstrated, typically a permit tech or a front counter type person. Make it ready to issue. Collect any issuance fees, yes or no. It sends out an email if you want to collect fees. You can tell them to pay using the link provided in the email. They pay and you issue. So very quickly, I'm going to kind of really fast expedite this. I'm going to just sign this off. There are different review options, by the way. And I do deeply apologize. I'm very behind sending you all the workflow diagrams. And that's because we recently just unrolled a new enhancement that added some new result statuses. So I'm having to update a lot of workflow documents. So I'm going to make that a priority to get that stuff out to you by the beginning of the year, which sounds like a long time, but it's only a few days minus the holidays. I'm just approving both the reviews very quickly, just so we can kind of, we only have a few left to finish our last piece here. I'm now in completeness. That would show in the task filter. This record would now appear there in the completeness filter. And I make it ready to issue. Ready to issue will pull in any outstanding invoiced fee balance. So had we not yet collected any money, I would add, any issuance fees as appropriate. I need to invoice them to make them available to be paid. I'm going to go back to workflow because I hadn't invoiced my fees yet. My mistake. I forgot to invoice, and I know that because it said 0 when it brought in the fee balance. It said 0. So now, because I invoiced them, now it says the balance is $100. Ready to issue again is a very standardized moment in time. I highly suggest you consider providing us with a standard comment to build in your comment library so that you could just go to the standard comment library, jurisdiction, ready to issue, boom, plop in a whole paragraph of information about ready to issue. Now, ready to issue. Please pay the following fees. That, using the link provided in this email. Your approved stamped and plans will not be released until issuance fees are paid in full. So it is my recommendation, if you're an agency that is going to be using Bluebeam or doing electronic plan review, that you do not upload the approved plan set to documents until they pay issuance fees. Now, I've had more than half of agencies, when we do the electronic plan review training, which is a separate training you can request, by the way, if your agency wants to start using Bluebeam to do electronic plan review. We provide every participating agency with a certain number of Bluebeam licenses at no cost. So heads up there, that is an opportunity for you. It is a separate training, though, by the way, that comes at a later date that you can request. But we do train in that training that you at least consider that, depending on the culture in your jurisdiction. And that sounds like a funny thing to say, but some agencies, aka the Deschutes County, do super high volume. When they do electronic plan review exclusively, they don't even accept paper. And if they put the stamped approved plans and documents too soon, they find sometimes that the applicant will download the stamped approved plans and start work prior to paying issuance fees. Like there's a little bit of a timing sensitivity there. So just putting a bug in your ear. You decide what you think is best. And if you're still doing paper, then and if you scan it in, then maybe don't upload the scanned approved plans until issuance fees are paid, or consider not making the documents available through permissions. You can do that. You can restrict permissions on an uploaded document that nobody can see it or download it until you set the permissions to do so. So there are a couple of different ways you can manage that if you think that would be an issue in your jurisdiction with applicants. Or you can just upload stamped approved plans at the time they're stamped and approved and wait and find out if applicants are going to download the plans and start work before they pay issuance fees. See how it goes. Only the larger agencies have expressed any issue with the timing of that. Okay. So I would say this, I'd make this ready to issue. Off this email goes. By the way, it's going to mandatorily email to the applicant of record. I can choose to mail it to my licensed professional. I can choose to CC it to the building official or whatever, any internal folks, if that's appropriate or necessary or helpful. For instance, building agencies that issue backflow permits in the plumbing world will CC Public Works for annual backflow inspections. So every time they issue a backflow permit in building, they internally CC notify, say Eric as the lead inspector or whatever for backflow inspection tracking. Just a singular example of some of the ways you can think outside of the box where CCing internal people on certain things can feed a separate but associated process, like annual backflow inspections. Just as a single example. Okay, so we kicked this off. We've got a few minutes left. I just want to talk about standard comments. Ready to issue. They get that email. Now this sits in ready to issue. The status updates to ready to issue. It's waiting for them to pay. It is not issued yet. It's waiting to be issued. I got the email right here. Because I put myself as the applicant. This is what it says. Your record is ready to be issued. Your permit is now ready to issue. Please pay these fees using a link. Bing, bing, bing. I use the link. I pay the fees. Oops. Sorry, meant to go to payment. We're going to go ahead and pretend they came in, okay, over the counter. They want to pay. They're going to pay in cash, let's just say. Your payer, best practice, you should always pick the payer from the people on the record. You shouldn't free type in a payer. That is not audit worthy. So just a heads up there. Counties and cities often get government audits every so often, sometimes annually, depending on your size and budget, revenue, volume, blah, blah, blah. Sometimes every couple years. Having been audited multiple times at the City of Salem as the lead person on those audits, agency, city audits, it is key that you are not just free typing in a payer. So just a note on that. Save my payment recorded, boom, fees paid, because I cannot issue a permit with outstanding unpaid fees. Just as much as that is a check and balance in building, it is also a check and balance in public works. If that $100 right-of-way fee was not paid, the system would not allow me to issue the permit. So now I go into permit issuance. By the way, you do get alerts via email We will configure that for you if you don't have it already, but you will get alerts via email for any payment made on a Public Works record, for any documents uploaded to a Public Works record. So any of those two things happening online, you will get an emailed alert that those things are happening. They also show just bird's eye view in the alert page. We're in a practice environment, so there's no real alerts happening, but there would be a list of things happening here. Unfortunately, though, the alert list is commingled across all modules. So you would see building and planning and everything. Emails are way better because then I don't see everything. You only get the Public Works stuff for Public Works records. I'm going to go ahead and issue this. It is going to send out an automated email to the applicant of record. In the background, brand new functionality. Also in building, for those of you who also work in building, you already maybe are familiar with this. In the background, this is going to issue the permit, generate the permit report, email it to the applicant of record and to the licensed professional. Even though it doesn't show a checkbox, if there's a valid email here, it will be emailing the licensed professional, the permit, as well as the applicant. And you will not see the permit report displayed. At first, when we released this about a month or so ago, that part was unpopular. People still want to see the permit pop up, even if it's being automatically emailed. So we are in the process of restoring the pop-up. Just a note for any of you who work already in Acela in other modules. The pop-up will be restored, but the email stuff is all still going to happen automatically in the background. Okay, so I am going to submit this. It's processing that. Oh, look, oops, something I have not done something. See, there we go. You would see this. This isn't just for Kelly. Something is missing or not ready to issue. Typically, it's down here. It says there's an outstanding balance on the record. Remember I said it's usually in this last paragraph. Lo and behold, there it is. I'm pretty sure I processed the payment. Did I not? Oh, look, the payment failed. I guess I should have paid better attention. I was tearing through the payment so fast. I didn't pay attention to it not going through. Oh, look, and it's because I forgot to fill in. Marion County has separate physical payment offices. So my payment did fail because I never filled that in. And I should have known better because the receipt did not display for me. I was just moving too quick. So by the way, the payment receipt will display. You do have the ability to email it out to anybody attached to the record. Otherwise, it is automatically saved to the documents. I know we're right at noon and people have lunch and so on. I want to get this issue very quickly. It's going to send to Kelly. We already just talked about that. Now it shouldn't fail. There. She just emailed me automatically. Boom. You can kind of, because I remember I put myself as the applicant email. So I did get the permit issued email as the pretend applicant. Waiting for this to load. Stacy, herein might be our issue that Marion County's reported. And you know what? I'm not going to wait for it to display because we're already a few minutes after, and I want to be able to display the permit. Let me see if it added it to documents. It did not. It didn't generate it because I bagged out on that process. So just a quick note, if for any reason there's an issue with the permit, one, it doesn't even generate, or it doesn't email it out, which I saw in documents. There's no permit there. Of course, I bagged out. I did not wait for it to generate, of course. If for any reason you need to generate the permit again, record summary, reports, Public Works permit. If there was a problem on the permit, if it didn't automatically generate, if it didn't automatically email like it was supposed to, any of those kinds of things that might happen along the way, you could go to record summary and manually generate the report. Fingers crossed here. Oh no. You know what? Again, in the interest of time, I'm going to go in the record list and I'm going to open an issued permit that's already in the test environment so I can simply demonstrate the permit report. Now I got to wait for this record to load real quick. My apologies for keeping us a few minutes over. While this is happening, though, I want to let you know that pre-issuance, at least for the posterity of this training here, before I issue this, at plan review, the ideal would be that whomever plan reviewed this, you know, Public Works Development, engineering, whomever, that if there are any requirements for final, how it should be built, how the right-of-way should be handled, how, you know, I don't know what this permit is for, this one that they had already created formerly. It looks like it's some sort of right-of-way. I can see the checkbox there. You know, based on your local requirements, the ideal is, and again, this is typically happening at plan review, is that those persons that can control that level of requirement, that they know the people, and it could be the permit tech. So, you know, no shame there. It could be the permit tech that knows all this. You would add a condition of approval, ideally, for anything that is that you need to require for final for completion. So they added those are called COAs. They added a COA to this permit. I'm going to open it so you can see what they added. Quite big here, but they added this big chunk of information. Applicant, utility company, contractor is responsible for and shall bear all costs associated with locating of the right-of-way. State Street appears to be a 60-foot right-of-way at this position, conduit parallel to road. This is a very specific level of approval, right? And so they are including this language in the condition of approval because they are requiring this through the permit before they will final. Trenches and holes within 10 feet of edge of road must be backfilled or plated overnight. Trenches beyond that may be covered. This way, that way, coned, must have identifying signs. This is not valid until the inspector's been notified. That is their local requirement around this type of permit that they created. That condition of approval, once the permit is issued, it will be included verbatim in the permit report. I'm opening oh my gosh. This is terrible. I can't even open it. Oh, Lordy. I'm going to try to generate it again. I'm just having all sorts of problems here in Marion County. Maybe I should have picked a different agency on this note. Stacy, do you know anybody else has Public Works just off the top of your head?
McMinnville.
Thank you. Everybody, I'm going to jump ship quite quickly here. We're going to go to their record list. Sorry about Marion County. I don't some sort of glitch. We are actually dealing with processing error there right now. So unfortunately, it looks like it's kind of going through to the testing environment. Of course, I got to wait to load the entire McMinnville now record list, even though it's in the test environment. As soon as it loads, I'm going to go to Public Works, add a yes.
Yeah, well, while we wait for that to load, I had a question on intake for, you mentioned that it's not possible for like applicants to submit the application themselves, that it would have to be us. Is it possible to
Correct.
toggle that on so that like our utility companies, franchise utility companies can apply themselves, or is it not an option?
Well, you might be in luck. We are in the midst of an enhancement to create a right-of-way, only right-of-way will be available as an online application for Public Works in the near future. Would that meet that need?
Yeah, if they can apply for right-of-way permits, yeah, I think so.
Okay, then the answer is yes, that is an enhancement that is actually currently in development. Now,
Great.
mind you, for right-of-way permitting though, they're going to have to, know some of that intake information, right? They're going to have to be able to put in a valid parcel, have valid licensing if that's required, etc. Okay,
Great.
so
And
this,
then,
does that answer your question?
oh, yeah, there were just follow-up questions to it in the chat.
Oh, okay. I will capture those in just a minute here. I just want to demonstrate a permit report. My goodness. And unfortunately, I don't know if McMinnville uses standard comments and conditions of approval. Now, please note, you can still use conditions of approval to feed detailed approval requirements, meaning any local standard design requirements, build requirements, construction standards, whatever it might be that is party to what you're approving them to do. You can add the conditions of approval and you can manually type them in. I want you to know you don't have to use a standard comment library to add a condition of approval. Now, conditions of approval, oh my goodness. Okay, this appears to be a staging problem or something for me. I am going to jump ship to production. Just going to go into McMinnville production. So sorry about this. Jeez. You can add a COA, condition of approval, condition for completion for final. They are not about plan review. COAs, as we call them, conditions of approval, are for final and completion. Any local requirements that you need to document to the applicant, that you need to communicate to the applicant about construction, your local requirements, depth, fill material requirements, signage, safety, any of that, you can document through a COA. And you don't have to use standard kind of comment library to manage that. You could free type those in, but I'm going to tell you, there is some definite power to be had by building some of that local requirement language into a standard comment library for use by Public Works. Because the COAs themselves will print directly on the permit report. Whereas formerly, a lot of agencies would staple a lot of that, at least they did at City of Salem, pages of Public Works construction standards or requirements about right-of-way or right-of-way utility work or whatever it is, or franchise work, etc., tree trimming, who cares, right? There are often local requirements around that. And we would see, at least at City of Salem, Public Works stapling to the plan set, pages and pages of those kinds of requirements. And then that stapled document gets ripped off the plans by the building contractor. And next thing you know, they're saying, oh, we didn't know. We didn't know that it had to be built that way or constructed this way or done this way or whatever. That stapled on stuff can get lost very easily in the paper plan process ultimately. At least that's been my experience. City of Salem, which is a high volume agency. And then for a while, they'd stamp it too. But then we found that some of the requirements were just too lengthy for stamps, stamping it directly to the plans. Sometimes they would reference like Salem Revised Code citation, which meant then they had to go look that up online just to abide by it. So using COAs in a way that can provide those local requirements for final is a very, very powerful thing. I'm waiting for this record. Short story. We do have a submittal that allows you to submit standard comments to start building that library. All right, here we are. Notice it's 3 pages because what they've loaded or what they've included in here, and I wish I could make this bigger, but this particular window, I'm just going to make it bigger so you can see it, and I can just kind of scroll in this window. Obviously, you get your header. The application type, from the application type dropdown is included. Scope of work, site information, meaning all the property data. Contacts, so any of the people you attach to the record will be listed. And then the O1 General Information tab. What service area you selected. Public or private if you had selected that. Conditions of approval for public works. Incidentally, what they added, look what they added. Open cutting of asphalts allowed in areas approved by the engineering department. So on. This is so local. Shall be this much, shall be this big. Local phone numbers, who to call, Western Oregon Waste, McMinnville Public Works, or right of way. All their local requirements around all of that. Notifying Logan Adams of lane closures, notifying this company, doing this, doing that. All local McMinnville. These are COAs that they added, or standard permit report language that you can also add. And that's my last little piece, and I'm so very sorry that we're a few minutes over because we had technical issues. But in these service areas, we'll send you a submittal. You can provide standard report language, which will print on the permit anytime it's driveway, sidewalk, curb cut. We'll print on the permit anytime it's erosion sediment, anytime it's right away, anytime it's stormwater. So there is also standard permit language you can provide us down to the service area. Okay, that is the upside down and all around for Public Works. This session is recorded, so we will be providing it to you, in the next week or two because of holidays. Thank you so very much for staying a few minutes over. We appreciate your time so much. And Addie, I will respond in the chat. I can also send you an email.